Morning. The record in case number 2021-00339. My name is Kent Chandler. I'm chairman of the Kentucky Public Service Commission. I'm not joined today by our other commissioner, Mary Pat Regan. She is ill this morning. I'd ask before we get started that everybody that's in the hearing room that you turn your cell phones to silent or turn them off, and then ask our witness that is remote just to please leave your microphone and your camera off until you're called. And if you have problems, you lose your feed from us, or if we lose you, just to use your lines of communications with your attorneys in the room, and we'll get that fixed, or we'll take a pause before we get going. Before we get started, we will go ahead and take a entry of appearance of counsel. So for the respondents.
Yes, for North Manchester Water, Rebecca Price and Jim Gardner.
Good morning.
Good morning, Your Honor.
And for counsel, or staff counsel, excuse me.
Heather Temple for commission staff.
I reviewed the record. I noted that public notice has been given. So I guess we'll assume the motion hasn't been ruled on yet, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So we have an order in circulation to grant that motion. We'll move ahead with the hearing today. Given that the mistake was inadvertent, I don't think that anybody could reasonably expect a hearing to happen in the past. So, relatedly, we also haven't entered an order yet for Ms. Lewis. Is that correct?
Yes.
But we'll go ahead and I think it's already been communicated to you. It's fine for Ms. Lewis to participate remotely, and we'll, I think, probably determine in short order whether or not her testimony is necessary after we hear from one or two of the other witnesses.
Thank you, Chairman.
All right. Is there anything else, Ms.
I
Temple?
don't believe so.
All right, so, we haven't been doing this with in-person hearings, but Ms. Price, you mind, before we get started, just identify all the different witnesses on behalf of North Manchester Water Association that came today, just to make sure that we've got everybody
Yes.
that was included in the order?
Yes, we have Ted Woods, Steve Davis, Mike Maggard, Rose Lewis, and Bill Gray.
Steve Davis, Ted Woods, Rose Lewis, Mike Maggart, and Bill Gray. Okay. And we have, and you may not know this right off, but we have that Mr. Maggard is the engineer, contract engineer for the association. Bill Gray is the field manager, and Rose Lewis is the office manager. Those are the appropriate titles?
That is correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right, so since there is no one that is in the room from the public to provide public comments, and that there is no one that provided the commission an interest pursuant to the notice that was provided and the information located on our website to provide public comment remotely, I'll just indicate for anybody that's watching this live or that watches it prior to the submission of the case that public comments can be made at any time prior to a case being submitted. There are three different ways to provide public comments. The first is to send them by mail to the Public Service Commission at 211 Sauer Boulevard, Frankfort, Kentucky 40602. The second way is to email the Public Service Commission your comments at psc.comment@ky.gov. And the third way is through a portal on our website where you can provide public comment directly into our website. We only ask that when you provide public comment that you note your name, your address, and the case number, which in this matter is 2021-00339. We ask that you indicate the case number just so that we are sure that your comments get into the right case record and that they can be taken under consideration in the commission making their decisions. So since this is, given the form of the hearing and investigatory nature, happy for you to call your own. We know it's a defined witness list, so call them at your Well, let me just ask, do you have a particular
I was going,
list that you like to call them in, order you like to call them in?
ask that Steve Davis go first, if that was possible.
Do you have an objection to that, Ms. Price?
No objection.
Okay. All right, so we'll have Ms. Temple call the witness. I'll swear them in. Ms. Temple will ask them a little bit of background questions, title, things like that. Go past me, whether I have any questions, then we'll come to you to do some, we'll refer to it as redirect, but that's a little tough when you didn't get direct. But some opportunity to ask your witnesses some bolstering questions if you'd like for clarification.
That sounds good. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Temple?
Yes, I would call Steve Davis, please.
Mr. Davis, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is true and correct under penalty of perjury?
Yes, sir.
Okay, please have a seat. State your name and address for the record.
My name's Steve Davis. My address is 193 Isaiah Seth Lane, Manchester, Kentucky.
Do you mind to spell the name of the road? I just want to make sure we've got it right.
Isaiah, I-S-I-A-H, Seth, S-E-T-H, Lane.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Temple?
Mr. Davis, could you state your role with North Manchester Water?
I'm currently president of the board.
Okay. And how long have you been in that role?
About 3 years.
I guess if you could give the date, do you remember the date?
No, ma'am.
Was that in 2018 though?
I'm not sure, ma'am. Exactly. Is late 18, early 19. I can't remember.
Okay. And do you receive any compensation for being the president?
No, ma'am.
And do any other board members, other than what we're gonna discuss with Mr. Woods, receive any payment for being on the board?
No, ma'am. It's volunteer basis.
Okay. And then I'm going to talk about that data request, the fourth request for information, where we get into that. So items 1 and 2, I don't know if you have a copy with you today, if your attorney does.
He's got it, Your Honor.
Okay.
So in that first request, or response to the first request, it said that Mr. Woods provides accounting services for North Manchester Water. Could you kind of explain a little bit for your knowledge and understanding what it is that Mr. Woods does
Mr.
as the
Wood,
accountant? Sorry.
I'm sorry. Mr. Wood he's currently on our board. He's a board member. He's our CPA. He does our payroll and pays her bills.
Is that it? Payroll and pays the
Pays her
bills?
bills and he does her paperwork at the end of the year, paperwork for turn in at the end of the year.
What about any of the accounts receivable, anything like that? Is that included in that?
Yeah, that all goes into a bank, and he takes care of all that.
Okay. And then in item 2, it talks about that the board voted at a $600 a month rate at its regularly scheduled board meeting on October 1st, 2018. And the board voted on June 6th to raise that rate. Those board minutes are in that item 2 response. And so if we could talk about that just a little bit, because the minutes don't really explain exactly what happened. It just says, Mr. Hoskins made the motion. Could you explain some of the discussion that went on behind that?
We decided as a board, the previous CPA was doing the work, was making $1,600 per month. The board, as a board, Mr. Woods didn't ask for no raise or no pay raise or pay increase. So as the board, his responsibilities was greater. We'd add more on to him. Like all of our bills that come in from our water suppliers or fittings and things like that, he'd have to take those and pay those. And the stuff he was having to fill out at the end of the year, we feel like he deserved more of the money than what he was getting, so the board decided to raise his pay up.
So that was in the later meeting. I'm gonna go back to the 2018 meeting in October. The first meeting.
$600 per month?
Yes. All
Yeah,
it
that's what
says-
we agreed on to pay him to start with, yeah.
Right, and all it says in there is Greg Hoskins made the motion to have Mr. Woods become the accountant. So what was the conversation among the board members that led to that decision?
We as the board, we sit around, when we were sitting at the board meeting, we started talking about the responsibilities that we was adding on to him. And I take full responsibility for those minutes, as I was the one recording them, because we wouldn't have a secretary there at the time. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't, and probably the mistakes you're finding is when I'm trying to hold the meeting and write the minutes down, and I take full responsibility of that. But we was talking about, see, I don't think you said somebody didn't even second the motion, did they?
I don't remember off the top of my head.
Greg made the motion to made the motion, but apparently I didn't write down somebody usually has to second that motion. Then we vote on it. So apparently I'll be responsible for that. I didn't write it down in the minutes.
And I understand that, and we're not taking issue with the minutes themselves. I just wanted to get some background on the conversation that was happening in the room that led to this decision to vote for Mr. Woods to be the accountant.
You talking about why he even become the accountant, period?
Yes.
Oh, but it's because the accountant we had got cancer, and there's only one accountant in, she wasn't even really an accountant. And
Okay.
there's only one accountant in Manchester, and it was Mr. Woods, and then you have to get somebody you can trust.
Okay.
So we asked Mr. Woods, would he be our, and when Greg made the motion for him to be our CPA.
Okay. And who decided on that $600 a month? Or was it a consensus, or how did that number get thrown out?
That's what we was paying the lady that was doing it before.
Okay.
And Mr. Woods, we sold him, that's all we could afford to pay right at the present time, and he agreed to do it for that.
Okay. And then, did anybody at all seem concerned that a board member would also be taking on that role?
No, ma'am, it wasn't an issue.
So, then the other minutes that were provided were also for the June 6th meeting in 2022. And that's the one where the raise occurred that you were discussing just a few minutes ago.
Like I said, his role, we just kept adding more and more. We got financially stable as we was going along, and we thought it appropriate. Because he received a raise on doing the CPA work. We eventually want to get him to where he makes the same that the old one made, because he's doing more, same if not more. And
Okay. And just to be clear, could you go over exactly what the duties are again?
his duties,
Mm-hmm.
he does her payroll.
Okay.
He pays all of her, he goes over all of her invoices and pays all of her bills. And basically, he's in charge of the whole financial part of it.
Okay. Now, also discussed in that set of data requests was some information about the audits. And finally, in April of 2021, the 2017 audit was completed, according to that records, but it basically says, you know, we couldn't really do a full audit because we didn't have the records.
Yes, ma'am.
So, where are those records?
But they didn't keep very good records.
Okay,
This is a new administration, new
Okay.
board. The old CPA is in prison. They're being investigated. All the previous administrations is under investigation right now. He could not get majority of the paperwork Mr. Lee needed, he could not get, because
okay,
it was gone, missing, wasn't even put down. So he's been having trouble. He had trouble getting the 17. And as far as I know now, right as of now, the 18, 19 from on up, he's
so those records were maintained?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you said that the board was being investigated, is that for conduct when they were?
not this board.
No, I know, the old board,
The old board and old administration, yeah.
for activities that occurred while they were board
Well,
members?
the activities that went on to that whole administration.
Okay. And that's why, you believe that there just are no records, like no one can find them at all?
Well, ma'am, when we decided to fire Mr. Stivers,
Mhm.
it was right at 6 months or 8 months before he could even got our records to our office. I had to call the Board of Accounts in on him, and he just give us the runaround on getting our records and what records we get. He sent them down there. We had to send men to get them in the truck, and they was just stowed in totes.
Okay.
It was just a mess.
And so I'm assuming now, because you've already touched on it a little bit, and so from 2018 to present, the records are being maintained appropriately.
Yes, ma'am.
And do you all have a written policy or anything about how those records should be maintained?
As of now, our invoices that comes through the office, they come through our office, the office manager. They're proceeded to go to the CPA office. He pays the bills out. As far as their minutes, they're recorded. They're recorded that night, typed back up. There's a copy at the office and a copy at Mr. Woods' office. We keep 2 copies in case something was to happen.
And said, also, in that data request, you all said that at the November 7th, 2022 board meeting, you expected to choose a new accountant to do the 2019 and forward audits. Did you all make that decision?
We sure did, ma'am. We made that decision to do that when we called Sam. We got in touch with Sammy Lee, and he'd lost somebody to COVID at 21, and they passed away, and said he'd had a lot of trouble getting everything done. He'd lost a lot of his staff. But us as a board, what you're talking about there, yes, ma'am, we decided we wanted to do that because he was behind and we needed those reports. And we got in contact with him. He asked me if he even needed to get a lawyer, and we told him no. Said if you just get these to us, but after he gets 2021, he's on 20. I think he's on 20 and 21 now. We were going to release him of his duties as far as audits, so we can get a timely manner of getting those audits turned in.
Oh, okay, so the 19, 20, and 21 are being done by that same auditor?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then going forward from, I guess, 22 onward, you're gonna be
Yes, ma'am,
choosing
and
someone else?
we've not chose one. We're going to have to find someone to do those.
Okay. Did he give you any kind of an update on when he might have some of those done?
Me personally, Mr. Woods could probably answer that better
Okay.
when he gets up here, because I've not personally talked to Sammy.
Okay. So now I have some questions about, I guess, the financial issues with the, utility. Do you think Mr. Woods would be better for those? Okay, that's fine. And then I think then that would be everything I have for you right now.
Oh, I've got some questions. I'm sorry, Mr. Davis. Yeah, it's okay. I'm sorry. Just give me 1 second. So you came onto the board in and around 2018, is that right?
Yeah, in between 17 and 18, and somewhere in between there.
One of the things that came up, just a couple general questions before I get to specific things. One of the things that came up in the, a board meeting from early 2018 was, I think this is in the lead up to you all filing the case with the commission. You remember the disposition of that case, how that turned out, that basically the commission corresponded with the utility and said that the utility didn't have enough records to be able to figure out what the appropriate rates were. Do you remember that?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
In the lead up to that, there were the minutes. It shows, you know, the discussions with KIA and Kentucky Rural Water Association, members of the General Assembly, PSC, trying to figure out what to do because of the financial situation that you were discussing earlier. Do you generally remember that?
Yes, sir.
One of the things that was mentioned in those minutes is, and I'm paraphrasing here, but that the increase in the sold water to North Manchester by the city of Manchester had hurt you all financially. Do you remember that?
Yes, sir.
Were you aware then or aware now of North Manchester's ability to pass through and change your all's rates just as a matter of course with a filing here at the PSC, those increases in the purchase water costs from the city of Manchester?
Could you repeat the
Yeah.
question?
So-
I'm sorry.
So let me take a step back. I'll say something as a statement. If Ms. Price disagrees with the legal basis of my statement, she can object. But the PSC it's not the PSC, there's statutes that allow for water districts and then separately water associations to propose to pass through increases in purchase water costs. So for instance, I think they're 278.012 and 278.015, and they allow you, for instance, a water association that buys from a city or a water district, that if the city or the water district increases their rates, which they have to get approved by the PSC if they're selling it to you, that if they have increased their rates of the cost that they sell you water at, that you can come and just on a dollar for dollar basis increase your rates to your customers. So if somebody's charging you $1 for every 1,000 gallons of water, I'm making up numbers here, and they propose to double it and the PSC approves that for them, you all can then come in and increase the price you sell it to your members to by just the exact same amount that it costs you. So you just pass the increase on it. Are you generally aware of the availability of that?
Yes, sir. We are purchasing a contract with the city of Manchester. It used to be $1.50, and it was 2019. They come to a meeting and raised our rates from $1.50 to $2, and I think we did pass that on dollar for dollar
Okay.
on our bills.
So going forward, if they came to your meeting and said, we're proposing to increase our rates, you know, here's why, I'm sure they give you all the reasons why, you all can look at their books or whatever it may be. They have to get that approved by us before they can increase your rates. But assuming that the PSC approves it, you all have a process set up to where you would, well, let me say this. If you know about this, right, you know it's gonna happen. What process do you all have to inform someone at the utility or someone at Rural Water or wherever, what process do you all have today to make sure that you all filed the PSC to pass that cost on? So that you all, as an entity, aren't caught paying higher rates that you can't recover from your customers?
My knowledge of it, we'd have a board meeting, and we would run it through the proper channels. We'd run it, if we was gonna have a rate increase, we'd have to contact, our lawyer, we'd contact Rural Water. Mr. Maggard there would go over the proposed things with him and get everything in order, and we'd vote on it as a board, and we'd have the proper, Mr. Woods would probably end up even wanting to fill out the paperwork, send it in PSC.
Okay.
That'd help.
Yeah, so Mr. Woods, not Mr. Maggard.
Mr. Maggard, I meant.
Okay, that's fine. I
I'm
thought, I
sorry.
didn't, no, you may have said Mr. Maggard. I just want to make
No,
sure
I
I
said Mr.
understand.
Woods, I think.
Okay, so Mr. Maggard would do it. Do you all have and the reason I ask is not specifically to Mr. Maggard, but it's different with, we regulate 150 water associations and water districts, and every one of them has a different relationship with their engineer, right? Some of them have a contract engineer, some of them have in-house engineers, some of them have, they go project by project, some of them have a closer relationship, and some of them ought to be calling them 5 times a week and don't call them but once a year type thing. So the reason I ask is because it's not as ordinary course as you would think. What is the relationship with Maggard Sisler? Do you all have an ongoing contract? Do you have just a relationship, and then the Mr. Maggard waits to get paid until there's a project that I'm wanting to make sure that I understand what sort of services you're getting and for what compensation Mr. Maggard is getting for him, or if he's frankly, in a lot of these situations, it seems like it's trying to help you all through the other times.
Yes, sir.
In anticipation that there might be work available and that you're going to need expansions and replacements, and sort of doing it out of the there's a word for it in business, client relationship. Right. So how is that? Just any given day.
To make a long process short, when we first took over this new board, he was there to kind of help guide me and what I needed to do and things I need to do. We had a board meeting, and we hired him on as like a consultant and our engineer.
Okay.
He comes to all board meetings and kind of, I've never been in a position like this before. I know water. I've been out in the field. I've worked in water, but been the president and things I knew. That's why I say I take full responsibility. If there's anything that's not right, I'll take full responsibility of that, and just tell me how I need to fix it, and I will. But he is our engineer, and we use him as a consultant. Like I said, when we first got started, he's kind of put me on the right path, where I needed to go, who I needed to talk to, and get me on the path I needed to be on as president over the board, and try to get our water company straightened back out.
Okay. So there's an ongoing relationship, and then like a project by project when something.
Yes, sir. He gets paid project for project, paperwork he fills out, anything he fills out, and he just sends us a bill, and
Okay. The reason I ask is there were a lot of questions in this case, and I know that there was an informal conference with staff throughout the case, and Mr. Maggard seems to know more about your all's utility than most engineers know about particular utilities. So you all are, I just want to make sure I understand, it's more, there's more input from Mr. Maggard between cases and between projects than maybe a different utility may have, just because of the situation that you all have been in the last few years, where there hasn't been stability and there's been a lot of turnover, and especially on the financial front, there's been a lot of well, you didn't have enough records to have a rate case. So that, I don't know what's a good word for that, but
Yes, sir.
I think an acknowledgement by everybody that you all kind of had to start anew at some point in the last few years. Is that fair enough?
yes, sir, we depend on him a lot.
What's the biggest issue you guys are facing? Is it operational or is it financial?
Well, it's all around, really, to be honest with you, and I'll try to explain in the shortest fashion as I can. You know, when we took over, and I say the board that we've got took over the situation, it was broke. $750 in the bank account, and 7 different bank accounts. They didn't have you have to have an account set up for when people pay you deposits. All that was gone. All the financials was gone in it. There was $750 in the bank, so we had to start from scratch. And then that's what we've been doing. We're at the current where we're at right now. Right now, what we're having our problem is we've currently found we used to have certain parts of the county, and somewhere or another, this is before my time, the city owns them now, because I used to work there in the early 2000s, and we read those meters and things back then when I was there, and all of a sudden the city's got them, and they made no new connections nowhere, so we've been out already cutting them and capping them, so the city can't, so we actually, you know, that's one of the problems we've got, where we're buying our water at and losing our water. We've got check valves, it's back feeding, our infrastructure's a mess, where over the past 30, 40 years, nothing's been fixed. I'll give you an instance like day before yesterday. We needed to turn the water off, and we had to shut off almost 200 customers because we had a valve at the stem was broken in that should have been changed years ago when it broke. But it was never changed. We've changed like 3 or 4 valves in the last couple of weeks, and the infrastructure is a mess, and all the money that was ever been spent on the system. It's just the system's wore out, and it needs replaced. We've got that old asbestos line in the ground, metal line in the ground. They leak. That's where some of our water loss is. We're just trying to hold on and get it straightened out. The biggest issue is the water loss, where water's going.
Do you, one of the, talking about the $750, one of the minutes said that you all found an account with $91,000 in it. You stumbled upon it, didn't know you had it. Do you remember that?
Oh, I remember all of it. They had 7 bank accounts when I went in as president. I went to the bank, and they had 7 bank accounts. The bank account, we're supposed to have a reserve. It was depleted. All your customers from 1974 that was in there, their deposits should have been in the bank. It wouldn't be much interest, but it'd be drawing interest. That was gone. There was no money. We just got 3 bank accounts, or 4 bank accounts. We've got a reserve. We've got a reserve for emergencies. We've got our customer reserve that we built back up, and we've got everything receivable. Everything goes in one account, and we got you other account that you pay out on. I mean, but all that stuff was depleted when we took over.
So you talk about reserves, you mean like depreciation reserves that are set aside?
Okay, say we have a major issue that comes up that it's going to take a few $1,000, $5,000, $10,000 to fix. We need to have that money there to fix it. I mean, we do that now. Currently, when we went in, we didn't have nothing.
And then a couple of it's more recent than 2018, but to the statement you made earlier, a few of the minutes reflect that you all had conversations, and maybe it's because of your knowledge of the system and things like that, but conversations come up and say, so-and-so, but so-and-so used to be a customer, now they're not a customer, but we know they're getting water from somebody, right? That whole road used to be customers. We know they all have water, but they're not. We're looking at the billing, and we haven't charged them, we haven't sent them a bill in years, that type of stuff, right? Whether they're getting your all's water or somebody else's water, it doesn't seem like at the time of the minutes that's known. How many of those folks are you concerned about that they're people who are getting your all's water but just aren't being metered, or the meter wasn't being read, or they were forgotten about, I don't know, whatever it is, but that it's water that you all are paying for, I guess I would say, but not necessarily selling.
I went back and looked up in 2007. They changed over a section and gave it to the city of Manchester. I used to work there and we used to read those meters. There's, Mr. Gray can probably answer to the number better, but there's over 100, probably 150 customers.
When you say gave it to the city, I don't know what,
I don't understand it either because I went back and looked into the minutes and all I could find was 2007, they granted the city of Manchester all of that customer, but they was never, what I'm saying is they never cut our line, or, you know, it's still using our part of our system. You know, it wasn't never, we'll go out here and take North Manchester Water off the system, cut them off, because we just capped one of the lines last week.
what is, in terms of the role of Mr. Woods versus the office manager? What does the office manager do financially that is short of what Mr. Woods is doing?
Okay. The office manager in the office, of course, they bring their bills in by drop box. We got a drop box. They can put them in if the office is closed. She's required to go open those in, to get everything ready, put it in the bank. They take it to the bank bag, take it in the bank. All of it goes to Ted. The money goes to the bank. Then he distributes it. But they take in all the payments. The office manager does. We've got two ladies that work in the front office.
Mm-hmm.
They're in charge of people coming in when they pay for a meter tap, deposits, just paying their bill in general. All that money comes to the office. Then that money from the office is dispersed to the bank, to the bank bag, take it to the bank, deposit it in the bank. From there, Mr. Woods pays her bills, pays her payroll. The office manager's in charge of the time. They turn their time into her, and that's what she does.
Okay. And then does Ms. Lewis do any of the reconciling the bank accounts or anything like that, or is it just preparing the deposits each day to take?
She
to
just
the bank?
prepares them and turns them in. We do our own billing as far as what I'm saying. They punch them in the computer and bill them out. They do that part of it in the office. They used to not do that, or CPA, the old CPA, not one now, used to do all that.
Well, that was one of the questions I had is what was the role of the old CPA versus,
He done all that in-house in his office.
he did all the billing?
He done everything.
Okay.
He was-
Mailing out the.
Yeah, he's
okay.
president of the company, he was CPA, he's in charge of all of it.
Okay. So if there's a billing issue, goes to Ms. Lewis and then if there's an issue that, is of significance, then she will bring that to the board at the next board meeting. Is that fair
Yes,
enough?
sir. Yes, sir. Say I'm a customer, I come in with a problem with my bill, she'll look it up, pull it up on the computer, and if it's like a misread meter or something, she'll make a work order up and give it to Mr. Gray there, and he'll go take care of it, he'll send one of the men out to go check it, and they'll come back to the office, and it resolve the issue at the office. It wouldn't necessarily involve Mr. Wood.
Okay. So I've got the October 2018 minutes. I think that Ms. Temple was talking about earlier. You were president then. This is the one talking about where Mr. Woods was made CPA. And I'll just read it to you, but I'm sure you've got a copy, but you've got a lot of paper in
I
front of you.
closed it, I lost my place in it.
It's okay. I'll read it and then somebody can tell me later whether I was wrong. But it says a meeting called to order by Steve Davis. Bookkeeping for North Manchester Water Association was discussed, and it was determined a CPA. It actually says NMWA, and it says Certified Public Accountant, but just bear with me. A CPA was needed to handle North Manchester Water Association accounting. Motion was made to hire Teddy Woods, CPA, for $600 per month, effective November 1st, by Greg Hoskins, seconded by Wesley Hibbert. So the minutes do have a second in them, so that you're good there. All in favor, motion carried. Okay. Ms. Temple was asking you questions earlier about the discussion and how it came up. It notes the 7 members of the board were all present at that meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
If it's wrote down off 7 of those, they were there.
Okay, and if it says all in favor, your expectation is that the minutes are correct, that all 7 voted yes?
I probably wrote that down, actually, he can't vote for himself, so.
Well, that's part of the reason we're here, is it says in the
Yeah,
minutes that
that-
he
that
did
would-
vote for himself. and
That's
there's-
why I take responsibility on that issue. I was the one writing those, I was probably the one doing those minutes, and
Well, that's fine, and so now you're under oath here, and we've got this document.
that's,
And what I'm trying to find out
yeah,
is,
he did not vote for himself. He just,
your
I probably wrote it down wrong.
so your testimony is that he explicitly recused, or you know he didn't vote, or you remember him not voting, or you assume, which is it? Did you assume he didn't vote, or do you remember him not explicitly not voting
He
on that?
explicitly did not vote.
Okay, so can you explain that situation? I think that's what Ms. Temple was trying to get to earlier with, can you tell me how the meeting transpired when he was hired? Because the minutes explicitly say all in favor, and now we're,
That's where
he
I'm
recused. So can you
learning.
talk to me about how the meeting actually went on that issue?
That's where I'm learning, sir, on that, is if I'm doing those minutes and things, we're working on those things that, but now he didn't get up and leave, he didn't recuse himself, he was still sitting there, but he just didn't have no input on, as far as, influencing the vote or anything. I mean, it was all, the other 6 was in favor of him being an account.
And then when you took the vote, only 6 voted yes?
Yeah.
Okay, and he just took no vote?
Might not have wrote no vote down, but he's not allowed to vote. So, I mean, they should be all in favor would have been the 6 that was there, who was there.
So that becomes the issue, is I know what the rules are. That's not important to what the rules are. The question is, what actually happened? That's all I'm worried about, is not whether the rules say he can or can't do something. It's your testimony that he did not vote.
He did not vote.
Okay. And then it went on to say, thanks was given to Josephine, is it Gross?
Yeah.
For her bookkeeping service and dedication to North Manchester Water Association. With this motion, Ted Woods will have access to all North Manchester Water Association banking accounts, and Josephine will be removed. Okay. Is that part of that original vote about switching it over that he didn't participate in?
Yeah, that all participation was 6 board members, because we was doing the CPA work, and
Okay.
he had no bearing in that.
What was Josephine doing that's different than Mr. Woods?
She didn't pay her bills and things like that. She just like done her, like her taxes and things. She didn't stay on long. She got cancer and got sick, and that's why we had to get somebody else.
Okay. But she did
She did her payroll, she did.
she
Yeah.
did the payroll, and then whenever the deposits were made, was Miss Lewis the office manager at this point? Well, it doesn't matter. It's okay. So the office manager, did they still make the deposits
Yes, sir.
when Miss Gross was the?
Yes, sir. It all has to go through the bank.
All right, so they made the deposits, and then when it came to reconciling the checking accounts, was that also Miss Gross?
Sir, I can't remember how that worked out on that right there.
Do you remember who paid the bills when Miss Gross was bookkeeper?
No, really, I don't. I assume she did.
Okay. So, well, because I mean, she's got, the only reason I ask is, she did the end of year items, you were saying, right? She did the payroll, right?
Yeah.
And if she was the only one to have the access to the bank accounts, I guess my question is, who else could have been writing the checks to pay the bills for the utility?
No one, because nobody had access to it.
Okay. So I guess given all that, I guess I'll just ask you, what was she doing differently than what Mr. Woods was hired to do? Was there a major distinction between the day Miss Gross left, and I know she was sick, so I don't mean like that specific day, but
I understand.
what she was doing up until she regretfully got sick, and you all thanked her for her service, and then when Mr. Woods was hired to do the same thing, was there a material difference in what they were doing?
No, it would have been the same thing.
Okay, and then now that the months later, I guess years later, the amount paid per month to Mr. Woods increased from 600 to a different amount, right?
Sure.
And can you talk to me again about what those changes in job duties were that you were discussing earlier with Ms. Temple,
It
that
wasn't
you all felt
necessarily the
necessitated?
job duties that changed. When Miss Gross took over, we was about broke and we settled on a price, that price. And when Mr. Woods come in, he done the same thing for that price. And we just, as we gradually got better financially, we was trying to catch up to where we could pay Mr. Woods a fair amount of pay with the job. And the licensed CPA got $1,600 a month or 18. I can't remember exactly what it was.
Where in the record do we have the increase in the amount? Is that in response to a particular data request?
Yes, it's that same one with that.
Second?
With that, if you just scroll down to the next page, it's the June 22nd meeting with the increase.
June of what, 2019?
2022.
I don't have that one.
It is the attachment
It's the fourth.
to fourth two, yes, I'm sorry. The
Okay.
attachment to fourth two.
Okay, I've got it up right here.
It is page 5 of the PDF.
Of the total document?
Yes, sir. 5 of 157.
Thank you. So then, in June of this year, there's a meeting minutes for board members in attendance: Steve Davis, Henry Smith, Bobby Wolf, Carl David Crawford, Mike Combs, and Ted Woods. That's 6 of the 7 board members, is that right?
Yeah.
6 of the 7 board positions.
Yeah.
Was there was there an additional board member that wasn't there for that meeting? Can we read the names again?
Read them, please. Sorry.
That's all right. Steve, Henry, Bobby, Carl David, Mike, and Ted.
Greg Hoskins.
Very, that's right. Okay, so Mr. Hoskins. So Henry called the meeting to order. Steve seconded it. Henry made motion to accept the old minutes. Carl David seconded it. A presentation from Mr. Maggard, it sounds like, talking about an email from Joe Burns. And then this is all it says. The board voted to up CPA Ted Wood's pay to $1,200. All in favor. Do you know whether all 6 board members at that meeting, consistent with the minutes in June of last year, it still feels like 2022, all 6 board members voted yes?
He can't vote.
That's the, I
No,
know.
he didn't vote.
Why don't, you're what the rule says does not mean that's what happened
Okay.
in reality, right? I mean, I appreciate that there may be expectations in it, but the minutes explicitly say all in favor. And I'm asking you, do you remember him not voting?
Yeah, but I wrote that all in favor. I told you earlier, sometimes we don't have somebody that I have to do the minutes and run the meeting, and I take full responsibility if any mistakes been made on them minutes.
So you're saying under oath now, you explicitly remember Mr. Woods not voting on that particular item? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So the other thing is, you are looking at an auditor now, right?
We've not found one. We're gonna get one.
So do you have an expectation that Mr. Woods will be voting on choosing the auditor?
I'd have to check into the rules and regulations on that.
Well, would you agree that there would, the items to be audited, 19, 20, 21, were all done by the accountant? And the accountant at that time was Mr. Woods.
Yes, sir.
You think that's a conflict of interest?
If he chose, if he got to vote who the auditor was,
Yeah.
yeah, seems to me like it would be.
But that hadn't come up yet?
No, We've not picked nobody. We've talked among us, like, we're gonna have to do it if you don't hurry up and get these audits in, but we're gonna have to do something. And
You can't get money from anybody if you don't have audits, right?
excuse me?
You can't get money from anybody if you don't have audits, right?
We have
You've got a
to-
little bit of a reserve, but if something was to happen and you needed $500,000 right now,
We'd be
nobody's
straight.
gonna loan you money without 3 years audits, right?
We'll be strolling.
Can't get a rate increase. That you've already lived that one once, right? You gotta have good numbers so that you know you're not charging customers for costs that you didn't actually incur or in a way you didn't incur. Okay.
We're trying to turn the right information in, and I know it all, like the water loss and things don't look good, but we're turning in the right numbers. I've been not investigating, I've been going back and looking at the old water reports and things, and they had never get over 12% water loss.
Yep. Well, so you'll appreciate this, Mr. Davis. We have utilities in here that we ask them whether they'll ever merge with another utility. And say, oh, no, we'd never merge with that utility. Their rates are too high. And you go and look at that utility's numbers and they're losing $1 million a year. If you raise their rates to not lose $1 million a year, guess what? Their rates are higher than the person that they think's whose rates are too high, right? But to your point, you gotta be honest with yourself about what the situation is. And it sounds like you're saying that the utility for years hadn't been with its operational issues with the water loss. Is that right?
Yeah, it's,
Just putting in numbers just to make it not look bad so that nobody asks questions? Is that probably what happened?
I know it's what happened. I've got them on. I've got the books. I started to bring them, but it was irrelevant to today's meeting. But I've got all the bookwork that, and we've got people looking at things. But I mean, it's
Yeah.
we're turning
What do you
into
think,
ra- we're
what do you
turning
think
into-
the approximate water loss is, just on an annual basis? I know it goes up and down per month. I'm sure it's
Well, this
worse in
month,
December.
this month we 35%.
Yeah. Yeah. Just because of how cold it's been?
That we had a lot of troubles. We had a lot of lines, bust,
Okay.
people leaving the water running. You know, lines busting.
Understandably, right? They don't want their, they don't
I
want
don't-
the
I left
pipes in
my-
their
I left-
house to burst, but
I
it
left mine running.
causes problems, doesn't it? Yeah. Okay. All right, Ms. Price, any questions?
Yeah, could I have just a second?
Yeah, it's almost 10. It is 10. Let's just take a short recess, give you an opportunity to talk to your, Mr. Church. I just went completely blank. I'm sorry, Mr. Davis, and we'll take a 10-minute recess until 10 after. We're back on the record in case number 2021-00339. Ms. Price, do you have any questions for the witness?
I do. Mr. Davis, in 2017-2018, when you joined the board, who was the CPA for North Manchester Water?
Charles Stivers, Charles Marshall Stivers.
And he was a certified public accountant?
Yes, ma'am.
How much was he compensated by North Manchester for his services?
It was $1,600 a month, if I'm correct.
And can you describe the services that he provided?
He was president over the board. He done payroll. He done all the accounts, pays bills. He was responsible for their taxes or reports to ESC reports. He was responsible for the end of the year reports, audits. He done his own. He got $5,000 a year for auditing.
Did he?
So can I clarify? He was the accountant and the auditor.
He audited himself. Yeah.
Did Mr. Stivers receive bonuses for his services he provided the Water Association?
Not that I'm aware of, but that's the only money. That's the only monetary things I'm aware of that I found so far. Was he got paid the $1,600 a month, and he got the $5,000, $2,250 in July and $2,250 in August.
And the $2,250 payments, what were those for?
Audits.
For audits. At any point, did Mr. Stivers fall under investigation outside of this commission for his accounting practices?
Outside of North Manchester, yes, he's been, and he was in trouble in Tennessee. He got indicted in Tennessee for tax fraud and or something like that. It was some kind of tax thing. I don't know exactly the depth of it, but I know he's currently in prison for it.
And as president of the North Manchester Water Association, did you have any involvement in that investigation into his criminal activities?
No. Only thing I had where I was involved when a detective or agent would come needing paperwork or look at paperwork or ask me questions. That's the only thing I was involved in.
And it's fair to say that following Mr. Stivers' imprisonment, he was no longer CPA for North Manchester Water Association.
He was fired before his imprisonment.
After Mr. Stivers was removed as CPA, who replaced him and performed bookkeeping duties?
Miss Gross, Josephine Gross.
And what was Ms. Gross' relationship with the Water Association?
She was currently on the board too, and the reason she was done it is we didn't have no one else at the time, and he didn't send none of her paperwork to us. It was like 8 months before we got anything we needed. It was just a big mess. I told you, hey, send the paperwork down there in the bins and all a mess. But yeah, she was on the board.
Okay. Is Mrs. Gross a certified public accountant? To your knowledge?
To my knowledge, I don't think so.
No.
She just done taxes and things, and knew, we was in a jam.
And how long did Ms. Gross serve as bookkeeper for the Water Association?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure with the number. It wasn't very long because she got sick.
Okay. To your knowledge, did Ms. Gross compile quarterly reports for the Water Association?
She tried.
Okay. Did Ms. Gross complete regulatory reporting in terms of financial documentation?
Like I said, she tried.
But maybe her reporting was not complete?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Did Ms. Gross complete the 990 tax form for the IRS on behalf of the Water Association?
When she was there, the few months she was there, I can't answer that. No one for a fact. I'm sure Mr. Woods. I think Mr. Woods had to go back and redo just about everything that she'd done.
Okay. Well, that leads me to my next question. Does Mr. Woods complete quarterly reports for the Water Association?
Yes, ma'am.
Does Mr. Woods complete regulatory reporting forms?
Yes, ma'am.
And does Mr. Woods complete 990 tax forms?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Next, moving to the election of Mr. Woods as CPA. You stated before, but just to clarify, did Mr. Woods vote for himself to serve as CPA?
No, ma'am.
Did Mr. Woods make any speech at the board meeting in favor of electing him CPA?
No, ma'am.
Did Mr. Woods set a price or a compensation amount that he would accept for his services as CPA?
No, ma'am.
Who set the amount that Mr. Woods would be
The
compensated
board as a whole,
And-
without Mr. Woods.
without Mr. Woods? So in October of 2018, when the board voted to pay Mr. Woods $600 a month, it was the board who set that salary amount or
Yes.
that compensation
Yes.
amount? And in June of 2022, when his compensation was increased to $1,200 a month, did Mr. Woods have any input into
No,
that?
ma'am, that was the board's decision. We got financially, we was getting financially better as we go, and that his duties, we thought his duties, he deserved it.
Okay. North Manchester is in the process of conducting financial audits. To your knowledge, had the utility conducted a financial audit prior to 2017?
I stated earlier that I was looking over paperwork, and the only thing I can find that North Manchester Water was audited at all, since they been in business, is the personal audits that Charles Marshall Stivers audited itself. That's the only thing that I found.
But no independent audit prior to
No, ma'am.
2017? Who recommended the auditor that North Manchester is currently,
I'm
Using.
pretty sure it's Mr. Crawford, Carl David Crawford.
and who is Mr. Crawford?
He's a board member.
He's a board member. Did Mr. Woods recommend Mr. Crawford, or excuse me, the current auditor?
No,
No. Does Mr. Woods conduct any audits of the North Manchester Water
No, ma'am.
Association? And North Manchester has filed audits for 2017 and 2018 with the Public Service Commission. Is that correct?
we had Mr. Lee do them, but the report come back, they didn't have enough information to do it, and I think Public Services got that record.
Yes. And is North Manchester in the process of using Mr. Lee to conduct further audits?
We'd initially tried to find somebody, but he was in the process, and he said, I'm getting them done, so we're gonna give him, we decided to let him get the ones he's got done, and we're gonna have to find someone else, be on a timely manner.
Okay,
He's not been on a timely manner, and he should have all he needed after he's 18. He should have everything he needed, and it should have been done in a timely manner. I understand that he had problems with staffing and COVID and things, but, still yet, we still have to have things done in a timely manner.
when the board looks to hire a new auditor, will the board commit to precluding Mr. Woods from having any recommendation or voting authority as a board member on the selection of that auditor?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Last, just a few final questions. Is the North Manchester Water Association Board prioritizing improving the financial health of the utility?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Is the board committed to continue developing the necessary financial records to be in regulatory compliance?
Yes, ma'am. We're working on that.
Okay. And does the board commit to having Mr. Woods recuse and abstain from any voting on any matters related to his services as certified public accountant or on auditor votes at the board meetings?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, that's all the questions I have for this witness.
Do you have anything else, Ms. Dibble?
No, I don't.
You ever had a conversation with Mr. Woods about the auditors,
The current auditor?
any of them? previous, current, future?
No, we talk about how late this guy's doing it is and how bad we need them, that's about it.
Yeah. And I just want to go back to the question Ms. Price asked you, but you're saying that the discussion about increasing Mr. Wood's pay from $600 to $1,600 was spontaneous?
Yeah, it's board, or board, yeah. We're a small county, I mean, we know, everybody knows everybody, I mean, that's I'm saying, the board, yeah, we got to the meeting and we decided, hey, we done been talking about it outside the board, we just have a meeting once a month. Everybody knows everybody, so yeah, we talk about it, but when we had the board, he didn't have no part of it, but anyway, we decided, hey, he needs a raise, he's doing all this work, so the board decided to give him a raise.
Well, and I appreciate that. I'm not asking whether or not any conversations happened outside the board meeting. I'm actually wanting to clarify your response in that. Are you saying that at no point prior to voting to raise the amounts, that you're personally aware of any conversations with Mr. Woods about what he currently made?
No. I mean, we knew what he made. I mean, really don't understand what you're saying. I mean, we knew what he,
You voted in 2018
We knew.
to hire him at $600.
yeah, we knew he made $600, yes,
Yeah.
sir.
So, but it was in 2020, 4 years later, you all voted at $1,600, right? June of 2022.
Not 1,600.
How much is it?
I think it's,
It's 12.
1,200.
1,200, excuse me, 1,200. Okay, so 4 years passes, it's never discussed, and then at a board meeting 4 years after the original amount, it just comes up that we're in a better spot, we need to double it. Right? That's what you're saying?
Basically.
Mr. Chairman, just for the record, the prior CPA, Mr. Stivers, received $1,600 a month for his services. Mr. Woods receives $1,200 a month.
And I see that, it says what's it, 1,200, thank you, 1,200 here. The reason I ask you these questions is, and I think you acknowledge this, the minutes have no indication of what this discussion was.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even say, so-and-so wanted to raise it, or so-and-so was like, well, I don't remember, I'll tell you this, we employ 70-something people here at the Public Service Commission. I can't tell you with any specificity what any given one of them make. I have to go back and look at what I make at any given time, right? So that's why I ask that I personally don't have maybe it's my personality, that I don't remember that from 4 years ago what somebody is making per month, right? And so I ask in the sense that the minutes don't give any indication about context, about who brought it up, who seconded, what the discussion on it was, whether there were any folks that were concerned about it, or whether there was any question about, well, how does this compare to what Mr. Stivers was making? How does this compare to what Ms. Gross was making? How does this compare to what we could hire somebody to do in the county over, or do we need to pare this back and just find somebody who can do it for $600 as a bookkeeper? None of that discussion, which I'm going to guess is along the lines of the type of discussion that you all would probably have in this instance, right? Questions about it. None of that's in the minutes, okay? So I'm depending on you to tell me what the heck happened at the meeting.
It was like, I'm sorry, it's like you said, it was spontaneous. We was at the meeting, we knew we was gonna discuss it. He didn't know nothing, we did.
Okay,
But
so
it's-
the
I
five of you all knew, had a discussion separately just over the last few weeks or months about we're in a better spot, we're only paying them $600, we ought to think about increasing it. You all brought it up, and to your knowledge, no one had a conversation with Mr. Woods about it before that meeting,
To my knowledge.
to your knowledge.
And I'm taking oath right here, I promise.
That was an hour and a half ago, but yeah, I
I
understand.
promise
understand.
it's gonna get better. I'm learning, I'm not being at it, I'm just trying to get it turned around. I take full responsibility for those minutes being messed up. It's gonna get better.
Well, and the minutes, that, I'm not getting to you on the minutes. I'm saying I've got to now ask you about, through cross-examination and testimony, what did happen, because it's not in the minutes. That's the only reason the minutes matter.
Okay.
And so I just want to make sure, to your knowledge, there were no conversations with Mr. Woods at all about what he was currently making and what you all thought he might not make.
To my knowledge, no board member confronted Ted about, hey, which board meeting, we're gonna try to get you a raise.
And so is it fair to say that that it's your expectation that Mr. Woods was surprised at the meeting when it came up?
Yes, because he turned it down. And I say that, give you an example. A good friend, my transmission goes out, he runs a junkyard. I go to him, I say, he's on the board, Henry, I need to buy a transmission. And we're sitting there and drinking small talk. And I'm saying, listen, man, Ted's doing a lot of work or something like that. That's what I was talking about earlier when I talked about like that. But now, as far as my knowledge, anybody talking to that man about a raise, no.
Okay, and you said he turned it down. Tell me about that.
He just said you don't have to do it, and I said, we're financially able to be able to do it, and we want to do it as a board. And he said it's only fair. I mean, the other man was making $1,600 a month to do it.
Okay. So then it went through. After initially saying I don't need it, the board voted on it. Is that right? Okay. I gotta get you to give me an auditory answer. A head shake's not good enough. Is that right?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
sorry.
That's all right. Ms. Price, anything else?
Nothing further, Your
Okay. All right, I appreciate it. You can step
Thank
down for
you.
a minute. Thank you. Ms. Temple?
Because I think I'll now call Ted Woods, please.
All right. Mr. Woods, please take the stand. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is true and correct under penalty of perjury?
I do.
Okay, please have a seat. State your name and address for the record.
Teddy Woods, 305 Main Street, Manchester, Kentucky, 40962.
Ms. Temple?
And Mr. Woods, I guess, how long have you been a board member for North Manchester?
I think I went on the board,
Well, I guess there was a turnover in 2018. The whole board was brand new, right?
Right.
I think that's a better question. Okay. And so you all were kind of just learning together, I guess, for lack of a better
right.
way to put it. Okay.
Now,
So,
I'm on the system, and one of the guys that worked there, I was pulling out my driveway, and he came to me, he said, listen, our water system's a mess, and, you know, I just wanted to help our community and do all I could to help.
okay. And so we heard Mr. Davis's perspective about what happened at that first 2018 board meeting. So from your perspective, what happened? How did that all play out? At the 2018, where you were first voted to become the accountant.
Okay. Well, Miss Josephine, she had cancer and had to relieve herself of the duties of doing the book work, and I was just on the board, and they asked me if I would be interested, and I said I'll just do whatever I can to help, you know.
And you are an accountant? A CPA?
I'm a CPA.
Okay. And so all that discussion happened in the board meeting? Or was it kind of before, like Mr. Davis was just talking about?
I think it all happened at the board meeting. I can't even remember if she was even there or not. I don't know.
If who was there?
Miss Josephine.
I was asking about this discussion about you becoming the accountant that occurred at the board meeting, or it occurred before the board meeting and everybody just agreed on it at the board meeting?
Everyone agreed on it at the board meeting,
So what,
except me. I didn't have anything to do with it.
well, you said yes,
I agreed to do it, yes,
knowing that you were a board member.
yes.
And so, did you have any concerns about being a board member and also being the accountant?
I've expressed that many times, and, you know, that board that was on there before did a lot of things, and, you know, that were incorrect, and, I just got on the board to help, you know. And if there's a problem me serving as the accountant and being on the board, I mean, I don't care to step off. I mean, that's not a problem.
So I guess the question was, I don't know that you really answered it. Did you think there was an issue being a board member and also being the accountant?
Well, I wasn't doing anything that would, the only thing I was doing was, you know, the accounting work. I wasn't expressing any kind of opinion or anything like that.
Okay, so then that next meeting that we've been discussing in June of 2022, in your opinion, we've heard from Mr. Davis that it just kind of was this spontaneous event. Someone at the meeting, I can't remember whose name it was, it doesn't even say. The board voted to up CPA Ted Wood's pay to $1,200. So it was kind of just a spontaneous thing. There was no discussion around it. They just all said this and you did not vote.
That's correct. And in fact, I refused it when it was brought up. I said, no, that doesn't need to happen.
Okay. I do have some questions about the financial issues, so I'm hoping you can answer these today. When we did look at the annual reports that have been provided, it does show a net loss pretty much every year except 2020. You know, the one in 2021 was $121,000. They had been somewhat lower before that, but can you explain why there has been that negative net income every year?
Not right off, no. And it's just trying to, part of it's depreciation, part of it is trying to recover from all the bills that were there when I took over, and there being no income, no money in the bank accounts. It's really progressed substantially over where it was when I first was on the board.
And do you think that it can keep going this way with these negatives every single year?
Can it keep going? And probably not.
And so, you know, as a board member, you've been present at these meetings where Mr. Davis just talked about that there's, you know, you all are trying to become more financially stable. How is that happening?
Well, we're just trying to maintain the system better than it's been maintained previously. I mean, the system was just let go. It was not maintained previously. We're replacing meters, we're replacing line, and we're trying to upgrade when we can.
So I believe it was in that fourth set of responses that you all said that, as far as a rate increase, that you all had begun working with the Kentucky Rural Water Association to start that process. What does that mean? Where's that process at?
I'm not sure, I think Mr. Maggard was working on that.
Okay. As far as this issue that has come up in a lot of the responses to data requests about this KAA loan, when did that, and it has been defaulted on, correct?
We're still making payments.
Okay. But there was never a default with, some legal issues with the Clay County Fiscal Court?
I'm not sure.
Well, I think it was said you're the one that pays the bills, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what's getting paid every month on this loan, whether it was defaulted or not, I guess?
We're paying $7,000 a month to the county.
And do you know the amount of principal remaining on that loan?
Not right off the top of my head, no.
Well, I don't want to gloss over the previous thing. Are you aware that the county brought an action against the Water Association regarding the loan?
Okay.
Do you remember, Mr. Davis can't answer for you, do you remember the county filing a lawsuit against the Water Association regarding the KIA loan?
Yes.
And do you remember that the basis for the lawsuit was in regards to the payment or lack thereof on the loan?
Yes.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
Okay, so, but you're paying $7,000 a month, but you don't know the principal right off the top of your head?
No, I don't.
Do you know how much is remaining on that loan? The total amount that you all have left to pay?
It's, I can't remember right off the top of my head, no. It should be in the PSC report.
Mr. Chairman, we'd be happy to supply that information in a data request.
Okay, thank you. I think the rest of my questions would end up being for Mr. Maggard at this point.
Is $7,000 the amount that's always been the agreement since 2018 to pay the county under that loan?
Yes.
Have you all paid $7,000 a month each and every month since you came onto the board under that loan?
Most every month, yeah. When we
Well,
can.
the question is every month.
There have been a couple months where we didn't have the funds to pay it, yeah.
Okay. And is that the basis for the lawsuit?
Probably, yes.
Did you all enter into a subsequent agreement with the county regarding that loan?
I don't think anything.
Well, so
No.
Mr. Davis can't answer for us, all right, you know.
I don't know.
So let me ask it this way. You don't technically have a KIA loan, right? Because you're not a entity of the government. The county has the KIA loan, is that
That's
right?
correct.
You all have an agreement with the county to pay the county money so that they can pay the KIA loan, is that right?
That's correct.
And since you've been on the board, there have been discussions between KIA and the county and the Water Association about the level of payment, the frequency of payment, and where the payments are supposed to go. Is that right?
That's correct.
There's even been conversation at board meetings about whether or not the payment should go directly to KIA or go to the county or some other way. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. When, in 2018, where were the payments going? To KIA directly or to the county?
I can't remember.
Well, so you write a $7,000 a month check since 2018. Has it always gone to the same place?
Yes.
Where is that place?
Clay County Fiscal Court.
Okay, so you've never written a check directly to the Kentucky Infrastructure Authority on that loan?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Is the issue with the Clay County Fiscal Court fixed in the sense that they are content receiving the check and then remitting their payment on to KIA?
As far as I know right now.
Okay. Because there was an issue, they said for a while, they didn't even have an account they could put it into in order to put it in and then rewrite the check. Is that your understanding as well?
Yes.
Okay. Was the failure by the Water Association to pay that amount the basis for the lawsuit per your memory?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know how many months since you've come onto the board in 2018 that the Water Association has failed to pay that amount at all? There was just no check written for any amount.
It's been very few, maybe 2.
Okay. Have there been any months, except for those 2, have there been any months that you've paid less than the entire amount?
No.
Okay. So it's a couple, count them on one hand, that you've not paid, but with the remainder of that, it's been the full amount. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So let's go back to the meeting in 2018. Is it your testimony earlier in response to staff council that walking into that meeting, you had no anticipation or previous knowledge that anybody would bring up you acting as the accountant for the Water Association?
That's correct.
Did you have concerns about the situation of you being on the board of of the Water Association, as well as being paid to effectively act as an employee of the Water Association?
Yes.
Okay. And was it your testimony earlier that you expressed that concern to the rest of the board members, but nevertheless accepted the position?
Yes.
Okay. Did you participate in the conversation
No.
other than to say what you just said you said? I guess there was some degree of participation in the conversation because you testified earlier that you spoke to, even Mr. Davis said that you immediately, at least with the $1,200, declined. Right, so there's something there.
Right.
Can you tell me what your level of participation in the conversation was when the issue was brought up to hire you effectively? Well, let me take a step back. I will draw that. Is the $1,200 that you're being paid now to be CPA W-2 wages?
No.
Okay. How does that work?
There's,
Are you an employee of
No.
the,
I'm not an employee.
not an employee? you're providing a service then.
That's
So is that $1,200 income to your business?
Yes.
Is there a contract that exists?
Not a written contract, no.
Okay. As a CPA, do you have a separate business entity, or are you effectively a sole proprietorship for purposes of your business?
I'm a sole proprietor.
Okay. So how does that work? I'm not a CPA, but how does that work for income purposes? Do you file a W-2 on other accounting services you offer, or are those treated as a business income?
You mean other clients I have?
Yeah.
It's the same way.
So it's not personal income, it's business income?
Right. It's all business income.
But there's not a separate business entity, it's just as a sole proprietor.
Yeah.
Okay. So just, I don't mean to be dense, but there's not like a separate EIN for your accounting business?
Yes.
There is, okay,
Yeah.
there is, all right. And so the agreement is not with you necessarily for the accounting service, it's with your business and that separate EIN, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. Did you ever discuss that at the meetings?
No.
Okay. When you, do you write the checks to yourself for the $1,200 a month?
I write the checks. Yes.
Okay. And who are those checks made out to?
Eddie G. Woods CPA.
And are those signed by anybody other than yourself, like a board member or the general manager, or are they all single signature checks?
They're signed by two separate board members.
Okay, so do you sign the checks to yourself along with another board member, or do two
No.
different board members sign the checks to you?
I never sign a check.
Okay, you never sign a check, even,
Never sign a check.
okay. So when you come to board meetings, do you bring the checks with you for people to sign, or just throughout the month, whenever they're needed, people just stop by and sign the checks?
Yeah.
The latter?
The latter. Yes.
So you were surprised, is it fair to say, at the first meeting when it was brought up to hire Ted Wood CPA as the effectively to replace Ms. Gross for purposes of bookkeeping?
Yes.
How about at the second meeting in June of this last year? I'm trying to get used to the fact it's a new year. Sorry about that, Mr. Woods. That June of this last year, did any of the board members have a discussion with you in the intervening, let's say the couple of months running up to that June meeting, about the level of your pay for being CPA with the board?
No.
So again, just want to make sure I understand your testimony is that you were also surprised by the conversation and the motion that was brought up at that meeting in June of 2022.
Yes, sir.
Tell me about your involvement in that conversation in June of 2022.
It was brought up at the meeting, and initially I said, no, you don't have to do that, no. And then they continued to say, yes, you deserve this, and so they voted to go ahead and do that.
Do you remember which board member brought it up initially?
I'm not sure. I think maybe Mr. Davis brought it up at first.
Do you know, remember by any chance who seconded?
No, I don't.
And you were present during both votes, is that right?
Yes.
Is there anything that Mr. Davis provided in his testimony regarding those meetings that you'd like to provide greater clarification on, or that you remember differently?
You know, it's pretty much how you say it.
And is it your memory that Mr. Davis also conducted the meeting minutes for those two meetings?
Did he pardon?
Did he do the meetings for those minutes, or the minutes for those meetings?
Yes, sir.
Do you all have a secretary identified for the board? You have a president for the board, is that right,
That's correct.
Mr. Davis?
Mhm.
Do you all have a treasurer for the board?
Yes,
Who's that?
Bobby Wolf.
Do you have a secretary?
I think we do have a secretary. I can't remember who that is though.
Mr. Wolf's the treasurer. What level of involvement does he have in the finances of the utility?
He's one of the check signers.
One of the check signers, okay? Anything else? Do you send him monthly reports on the finances? You send him updates on the balance sheet or the income statement, anything like that?
No, I just bring those figures to the monthly board meeting.
Okay, so when it's time for a presentation on the finances to the rest of the board, is that done by Mr. Wolf or yourself?
By myself.
Ms. Price? Any questions?
I do have a few questions. Mr. Woods, is North Manchester Water a not-for-profit corporation?
Yes, ma'am.
And do the board members of the Water Association receive any compensation for serving on the board?
No, ma'am.
No monetary compensation.
No.
Do the board members receive any other non-monetary benefits for serving on the board?
No, ma'am.
So service on the board is a completely voluntary activity.
Yes, ma'am.
Does North Manchester Water, has North Manchester Water historically had bookkeepers or certified public accountants who also served as board members?
Yes, ma'am.
And who are those individuals?
That would have been Mr. Stivers.
He was the certified public accountant and a board member.
Yes, ma'am.
Is he the only person who served in a dual capacity, to your knowledge?
As far as I know, yes.
What about Josephine Gross? Was she a board member of North Manchester Water?
Yes, ma'am.
And she also served as bookkeeper for a period of time?
Yes, but she wasn't a CPA.
Okay. As a board member of, sorry, let me start that again. What are your duties as the certified public accountant for North Manchester Water?
Well, I pay all the bills. I pay the payroll. I do the payroll. I do all the payroll reports. I do all the quarterly filings with the Internal Revenue Service. I do the 990 at the end of the year, and also I prepare the Public Service Commission report.
Okay. And what are your duties as a board member to the North Manchester Water Association?
To come to the board meeting and make decisions, I guess, based on the, looking out for the betterment of our community and our water system.
Your duties as CPA are limited to those functions you just described,
Yes.
correct? And is there any overlap in your duties as CPA and board member, or are those distinct functions?
No.
Those are distinct functions?
No.
Is your role as CPA distinct and separate from your role as a board member on the board?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, that's all I have for this witness.
Anything else?
Do you know off the top of your head what the cash balance is for North Manchester?
Probably. Probably about 100 and. Probably around 130,000, I would say.
Okay. I don't have anything else.
Thank you, Mr. Woods. You can step down. Ms. Roach, we're gonna take a short recess until, what's exactly 11 o'clock? We'll take another 10-minute recess until 10 after 11, and then we'll come back and finish the rest of the day.
Okay.
we're back on the record in case number 2021-00339. Ms. Price, unless you intend to call Ms. Lewis, we've had a discussion, and I don't believe that staff council has any questions anymore. And my questions with regard to the delineation of roles between what Ms. Lewis does in the office and Mr. Woods does separately, I think were answered clearly enough for me by Mr. Woods and Mr. Davis. So unless you all intend to call her for any purposes, I think she can be excused from the remainder of the hearing.
We do not, that's fine with us.
Okay, all right, thank you for being here today, Ms. Lewis. We're gonna wait on, Mr. Gray, until, staff council, finishes their questions with Mr. Maggard. And assuming that Mr. Maggard can answer all the questions, then we'll take up whether or not we need to even call Mr. Gray. So we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Is there anything else we need to take up before we call our next witness?
We have nothing.
Ms.
And then
Dipple?
I would just call Mike Maggard.
Mr. Maggard, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct under penalty of perjury?
I do.
All right, please have a seat. State your name and address for the record.
My name's Mike Maggard. I'm at 220 East Reynolds Road, Lexington, Kentucky, 40517.
Dipple?
And Mr. Maggard, with whom are you employed?
I'm sorry,
Who are you, with whom are you employed?
Sisler Maggard Engineering.
And how long have you been working with North Manchester?
Since 2018.
Okay, since that changeover with the board?
Actually, it was 1 year prior, probably 1 year prior to that.
Okay. And could you kind of explain what you do for for North Manchester?
I am a general civil consultant, working with their field personnel, working on their projects. We worked on FEMA projects that they currently have. We've worked on line extensions, water loss studies, just general civil consulting related to the water company.
And I guess how, say they're kind of their consultant. So do you have just an ongoing contract, or how is that relationship, that financial relationship, I guess?
Well, per any contracts that are funded by the state or other things, those are procured through procurement code. I do work for them on a weekly basis, and, you know, I send them a bill once a month based on the hours that I worked.
So is there kind of like a cap to it, or is it an unlimited
Yes.
contract?
No,
or-
there's a cap to it.
Okay. And is that each year, is there a new contract bid out, or is it?
Yeah, like I said, any projects, you know, those are procured through the procurement code, advertised, and
So I guess that kind of, just to clarify that, so is it, you're hired for a project to finish this project?
yes.
Or are you, as Mr. Davis was talking about, you're kind of just kind of always at the board meetings, always kind of helping out? How
Both.
is that? Okay.
Both,
And so this just kind of general assistance,
yes.
how is that? What kind of contract is there for that?
It was a verbal contract. The board voted to hire me to do that.
Okay. And as part of that just general consulting, not a specific project, what do you provide?
I assist with water loss studies, water loss reports, I guess general questions, the materials, types of materials to order, the water rate studies.
Okay. And not to, you know, kind of keep on this, but, so that 2018 meeting, were you present as well?
I'm going to say no, because
Okay.
I have no recollection of the Josephine,
Okay,
Miss Josephine. I don't.
okay. So that meeting that occurred last fall then, October, I think, were you at that meeting?
Yes.
Okay, could you kind of,
Clarify, is that the meeting where the increase?
The raise, the
I think
raise.
that was June.
June, I'm sorry, I don't know, I said October, June. Your recollection of that, what happened?
It concurs with what the previous two, Mr. Woods, Mr. Davis said. It was brought up, Henry Smith, I remember Henry Smith, a board member, had most of the discussion as being more persistent that the rate was raised.
Okay,
I
and,
don't remember Mr. Woods saying anything other than, and actually, I think he actually stood up and walked out, and they have a separate equipment room, and I think he actually got up and walked into the equipment room.
okay. And Mr. Davis in particular did talk about, people see each other out and about and talked about this raise. As the general consultant, did you talk about this raise before
No.
the meeting?
No,
Okay. Okay, so then just to talk about kind of the financial stuff and the just utility in general. You just talked about the water loss. So in the 2021 annual report, it was reported to be about 34.6%. And on average, for the last 5 years before that, it was around 39%. Do you have you all completed anything for 2022 yet?
no, but we have addressed the biggest water loss issues that we have found was found during the flood event of 2022. That was July the 28th.
Okay, yeah.
And we actually identified check valves that are located in the master meter pits that were not working properly. They actually allowed water to flow backwards through the system, meaning that the water that was purchased, if the system stopped, it would actually go back through to the supplier. And at that point, we ordered those, but due to equipment shortages and those are 6 to 8 months, and we haven't received those yet.
But they have been ordered.
Yes,
And so you anticipate that once that is installed or fixed, then the water loss should reduce dramatically, or?
I would say
or
at
how do
least
you think?
10%.
At least
from what
10%? Okay.
and
And in one of the data responses that you all said that you had hired an outside company that was calibrating the master meters. Do you all, is that still being done, or what's the status of that?
That was done, and the
Okay.
master meters were within compliance. And actually, it's time to redo that, and we have contacted C.I. Thornburg Company that services the census meters to come back and recalibrate those. But there was a question with the provider about the master meter readings, and then at that point, we did request calibration, and they were all within compliance.
Okay. But you said they're gonna come do that again. Do you have a date or anything when they're gonna do that?
No, we're on the schedule,
Okay.
so a few months, I suspect.
Okay. And then I believe this question was referred to you about that, discussions with the Kentucky Rural Water about starting the process of the rate case. What is that status? How far have those discussions gone?
Well, every year I provide a proposed rate increase based on the financial, statements that we get from Mr. Woods at that point. So we provide that every month, and it's my understanding until we get the water loss case that we can't send in a rate increase.
What case?
The water loss case, the 2019,
So you believe, that the 1941 case, you were under the impression that you could not have a rate increase until you complied with all of those requirements?
that's what I thought we were told, yes.
Oh, okay.
And I know other people are all, they were given a surcharge to supply and fix these leaks in their system, but we've not come to that conclusion with North Manchester yet.
So you all have talked about that,
Yes,
but who decided that was not needed?
I mean, the North Manchester Water knows it needs a rate increase. I'm talking about the PSC.
Oh, okay.
I guess I'm confused.
Yeah.
So what's the situation? You're under the impression that you
With the
can't
water
file
loss.
any other rate increase or any other rate filing until you all complied with the outstanding items from the 2019-41 matter. Is that right? Is that what you said?
That's what we understood, unless we misunderstood.
Well, no, I'm not saying, I'm just wanting to understand the basis of that. Is there something that has been in an order? Is there something that's in a data request?
No, not that I know of, but the water loss is still 25 to 30%. What is the PSC stance on North Manchester's water rate increase was still the 30% water loss.
Well, no, I can't speak for the commission, but I mean, the commission gave, the commission just approved an increase for,
I believe multiple ones.
commissioners, I was trying to just call out one, but commission has approved dozens of rate increases for utilities with varying amounts of water loss. And I'm, not trying to speak for what the commission would or wouldn't do if something got filed, but the commission has approved water increases and then taken out the amount in excess of 15%,
Okay.
for creating rates. If it's, the commission has approved rate increases, rate changes, I should say, that increased base rates up to that 15% and then granted a separate surcharge for the amount in excess of 15% dedicated to water loss. And I believe also that, and I don't think I'm talking out of school here, I think the commission has approved rate increases in the past that look more like the first example where they took out the amount above 15%, just the cost to produce water or purchase water in excess of 15% for setting base rates. And then the utility subsequently, when they were able to come up with everything they needed to file a plan to do the surcharge, filed that plan separately through a tariff filing and or through a different proceeding, but it didn't have to be done necessarily alongside or the exact same time as a rate case because there were things that were outstanding or issues that were outstanding. I think also the commission, Ms. Price, I'll come to you, I promise. I think the commission also approved just recently a 2-year phased-in rate increase for Southern Water District, where there is a surcharge, but it is not a water loss surcharge. It is instead a surcharge for them to be able to repay the cost of new meters, because all of their meters were, I think I'll say it nicely, were non-functional, and they could not afford, without some sort of revenue stream, new meters. They were all well beyond the 10-year requirement for testing. And a significant number of them, I think maybe even a double-digit percentage, were registering as non-reads or odd reads.
So with that being said, North Manchester is prepared. We've calculated what it needs to be. We're prepared to, file a rate case.
Taking a step back, and I'll come to you, Ms. Price. I just want to make sure I understand what it was. Was it your impression that you had to be ready to propose a surcharge at the exact same time, ending along with a base rate increase?
Yes. And there was a rate increase shortly after we started there that was submitted to PSC, and it was rejected based on water loss, excessive water loss.
Mr. Chairman, North Manchester was not entirely prepared to delve into the requirements of filing a rate increase. And so we were more focused on the role of Ted Woods as accountant for this hearing.
Well, that's all that is fine, but if there's an impression that there's something in an order, I mean, the commission always speaks through its order, so we need to get to the bottom of the financial situation as well. I don't know that. I mean, I think I took from your position in your motion that was the perspective But this case was pretty wide open, and I appreciate that the motion setting forth this talked about the dual role, but I'd like to hear, given Mr. Maggard's role, especially in the last informal conference where I think he was the primary respondent to staff's questions, where he is and what his professional opinion is on the financial situation of the utility.
Okay, council has not discussed this recently with him, but we are prepared to look into this further with him. after
Yeah,
the
that's
hearing.
fine. So, but let me ask you, are you under the, I guess I'm unaware of at least the perspective where the commission has, quote, rejected a rate increase because of water loss. Is council aware of that situation?
I think that was like 2017, 2018 was when,
Well, the commission's order will speak for itself, but, well, I just so happen to have that order available. Was that you that sent that to us, Ms. Nipley?
Ariel did.
Thank
but
you.
Yeah,
So in an order entered July 10th of 2019,
yes, and
in case number 2019-52, is that the case you're talking about, Mr.
I
Mayor?
can't remember.
So it said that, well, here's what the commission said in that order. Based upon the evidence of record and being otherwise sufficiently advised, the commission finds that North Manchester Water failed to provide sufficient evidence to support its request, and therefore its request should be denied, which is a utility requesting a rate increase has the burden of proof. It goes on to talk about how the commission finds that it cannot reasonably rely on the incomplete 2017 financial data and therefore cannot calculate the requested revenue adjustment. And then it went on to attach a letter from Mr. Davis that was directed to David Foster, who at the time worked at the PSC's Revenue Requirements Branch. It's back when the Revenue Requirements Branch existed. I think it still does, but never called it that. Dear Mr. Foster, in response to the letter we received from you dated July 1, 2019, we do hereby agree with the summary set forth in the letter of our telephone conversations which took place on June 10, 2019. At this time, the only additional comment that needs brought to your attention is that the audit referenced in the letter has been completed and issued. We are in the process of having Sammy Lee, CPA, begin the audit for the year ending December 21, 2019. We will keep you informed of any other changes as information becomes available. I would note that there's an additional letter in here to Mr. Davis and Mr. Woods sent by Mr. Foster, which noted that there's a lack of information, financial information. But I guess I'll just say, I'm wholly unaware of the perspective that this was rejected because of anything regarding water loss. I believe the order will reflect that there was a lack of 2017 financial information, audited
There may have been
information at
discussions,
all.
there may have been discussions I had with,
Well, so I guess I'll
Somebody on
just
the
ask
staff.
you the question then, based on your conversations with the board, has it been discussed at those board meetings that the reason a rate filing can't be filed at the commission is because of the water loss, not about the financial information?
well, I think it was both, because, you know, if we come in with a rate increase now, we would want to have the latest financial statements, which we still don't have from Mr. Lee. So
All right,
yes,
let's just say you all did everything in terms of water loss tomorrow. The board did everything, you helped them file it, and it was filed with us tomorrow. You would agree there are still not 19, 20, or 21 audited financial statements to provide the commission to review a rating?
I agree.
Okay. All right, Ms. Price?
nothing.
So water loss being one thing, financial situation being another, would you agree?
Yes.
Have you been trying to help, have you been tasked with assisting the utility in responding to those water loss issues that are
Yes.
still outstanding from the 41 case?
Yes.
Is there a chance, what is your expectation in terms of timing that the utility will be able to complete those outstanding issues?
Well, there are months when perfect situations aligned that they are in compliance. There've been some 9-10%, there's been some 15%. So there has been months where everything worked, and then there has been months where we had catastrophic flood event, and we've had below zero temperatures where they had 15 leaks in the past week. So general overall, since the Ray case, they have improved immensely. They did hire a new field supervisor, and since that time, they probably at this point somewhere between 80 to 90 leaks has been corrected. So he has been very beneficial in locating field issues. As far as the hydraulics and how things are operating, we're working through those, and we've identified those. We have identified projects and supplied those to WRAS portal, the Cumberland Valley Ad, to put those in for funding. So we have those have been identified. So, I think we're to the point that we have applied for some money, and we're looking for money to fix those projects we've identified.
Well, so one of the items, let me just look at this order here, starting this case off. We talked about how the commission's order, and this is page 419 of the order initiating this case. On May 21st, 2020, North Manchester Water filed into the post-case record of the 41 case a letter from you of Sisler Maggard indicating that the comprehensive water audit should be completed within the next 30 days of the letter. On September 23rd, 2020, North Manchester Water filed information in compliance with the November 22nd, 2019 order. Almost a year later, in October 2020, Commission staff issued a request for information to clarify the information filed into the record in September of the year before. As noted in the July 30, 2021 order in case number 2019-41, the Commission had not received any responses from Northern Manchester Water, and again ordered North Manchester Water to respond within 10 days. As of the date of this order, North Manchester Water has not responded to staff's October 5, 2020 request in case number 2019-41. So this order was entered September of 2021, almost a year after those questions were asked. Were you aware, did the utility make you aware of those filings, those October filings seeking additional information?
No, and I think I did what was requested, and I think we had an issue with a local attorney that did not file those. And then he actually told the board that he was no longer involved. That's when we hired the new firm to handle those, but that was actually, we had given those and emailed those to a local attorney that had actually handled the 41 case, and he didn't file those with the.
Okay. So you all didn't even know, the rest of the board, didn't know that the additional questions had been sought?
No.
Are you aware of whether or not the North Manchester Water Association has an email address on file with the commission that it reviews the orders that are being served on the utility?
I would say yes.
You're aware of the email address?
They've had a couple email address, but I'm sure whichever one they've entered.
Well, the reason I ask, was it Mr. Shepard was the previous
Yes.
attorney? I just look at the service list here, and he's the only one that has Manchester written on his side. I think I remember there was also, 11 utilities involved in that case, so
Yes.
it's hard to keep them straight. And you worked up for a couple of them, so.
Yes.
But in addition to Mr. Shepherd being served with that data request specifically, it lists here that the North Manchester Water Association was served with this order by email to the email that was on file with the commission to receive services order. So you just, it's your understanding that the commission, or that the association just didn't get that order?
Not to my knowledge. And I don't check their emails.
Okay. District, or the association's in between a rock and a hard place on this, right? They
Yes.
they need more money
Yes,
to get the financial information, but they don't have the financial information to get more money.
correct.
Yeah. And it's not that they're just missing 2022. which
Correct.
I guess they're technically not missing 2022. They should be working on 2022.
Yes,
They're missing 2021, 2020, and 2019.
yes,
2017 wasn't good enough when they filed for the case in 2019,
correct.
because it was in February, so 2017 would have been their last year that they had an annual report on file with the commission. Regulations say that's what should be used. 2018, do we know whether or not it's useful information? I mean, there was turnover in 2018. That's when Ms. Gross left, Ms. Josephine Gross. Mr.
It's
Davis.
my understanding that 2018 was a much more serviceable audit than 2017 was.
Okay.
There was information still missing in the 2017 audit, and it's my understanding the 2018 audit was more correct.
The issue now becomes, though it's 4 years ago, whether or not it's reflective of the cost being incurred by the utility is questionable, right?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Price, any questions?
No, nothing else.
Anything else? Ms. Dibble?
Could I, so you said that you have kind of this verbal agreement for just kind of general help assistance with the utility?
Yes.
And that you're paid monthly for that?
Yes.
What is that monthly rate?
It's not to exceed 600.
Okay. I don't have anything else, thank you.
Ms. Price?
Nothing, right?
All right. Thank you, Mr. Maggard.
Thank you.
Ms. Dibble, would you like to call any other witnesses?
I don't believe so.
Ms. Price, would you like to call any witnesses or recall anyone that's testified today?
I think.
Okay. Ms. Temple, can we get a post-hearing, well, there's no need to rush. Can we get a post-hearing procedural schedule out in the next week?
I believe by Friday it should be fine, yes.
Let's shoot for next week. So it's quick to even get it signed and get it issued, unnecessarily so. So, all right. So we'll get a post-hearing procedural schedule out. Do you have data requests?
I believe there's just two.
And I'm gonna have a data request, that I'd love for you to ask about the email address, what it
Okay,
is,
yes.
whether the appropriate one is on file, who checks it, how often it's checked,
Yes.
and who has access to it.
Yes.
If we get a post-hearing procedural schedule out next week, and the data request out next week, it would 2 weeks for the questions that you've heard today, 2 weeks be fine to respond?
That should be fine.
All right, and do you have any interest in a post-hearing brief in this case? And I, to be perfectly honest, Ms. Price, I don't know, I mean, the hearing was what the hearing was, we clearly set out the hearing in this case. I don't know that there will be additional hearings or not, but at least on this particular issue, with Mr. Woods, would you like to file something post-hearing? A position of Mr. Woods individually, or a position of the North Manchester Water Association, or both, on the allegations set forth?
We would.
Okay, all right, so let's set that for, let's call it February, 17th. Does that sound good, Ms. Dimple?
Yes.
Is that okay, Ms. Burns?
Yes.
I don't think that you'll necessarily need the responses to post your data request to start that. So, February 17th, give you an opportunity for the respondents to file something to that effect. So understanding we have two outstanding motions, the first is to codify our position on Ms. Lewis's participation today, and the second to provide accommodation to the public notice that had the wrong date. Is there anything else that we need to undertake?
Not from us.
No, sir.
All right, with nothing else, we'll adjourn. Thank you.
Thank you.